Get started tonight. I want to again thank Leonard for picking up the last two nights. I know last two Wednesday nights. I know when he got involved with that, I thought, wow, what a couple of chapters to give him. I'm sure he did a good job with it. It wasn't that easy, those two chapters, so thank you so much for doing that. I want to kind of get into chapter 5 where we're at tonight, just kind of bring us up to date with a little bit of review. If you remember, the book of Nehemiah is more like one of these, a prayer book of Nehemiah. He basically had a lot of problems to solve when he went into the promised land to rebuild the wall. And for somebody that was born into slavery under Artaxerxes and had a job which was basically to drink and eat food that hopefully wasn't poisoned, as he was the cupbearer for the king. And so that's quite a job that he had. And there was many challenges that he came up through. I was looking at the different chapters today, and as we were going through the book, it was like he just faced one challenge after another. And in chapter 1, as we come up to this chapter, he faced a personal challenge, and that was what to do about the people over in Jerusalem. And he ended up praying. Matter of fact, I think I have. Oh, good job, Dave. All right. I even wrote this down. He had a personal challenge, and that was with the people that he realized needed help, and he prayed that God would do something about it. Then you have chapter 2, and that was a political challenge. That's where he went before the king and took a chance on getting him to help politically. Remember, he kind of had that quick popcorn prayer that was at the last minute when the king said, hey, what do you want? You're not looking too good. And he asked the king for help, which was a political decision. Then we go to chapter 3. We're going to call it an administrative challenge. And that was maybe positioning the right workers in the right places to get the job done. And then in chapter 4, he dealt with the discouragement of those who were working on the wall, and all the enemies were trying to stop them. They weren't happy with them, and he had to rally the people around and come together. And now, of course, I think part of the reason that maybe gave him the ability to do so good in these particular chapters and helping some of these problems is because who he was around. He actually, being the cupbearer, remember, for the king, he was around the king all the time. And so as a result, even though he might not have had the greatest education, we know that he saw the king make decisions. And he probably thought, wow, I need to make this decision. I saw the king do this, and this probably was a good thing to do. Or it's possible that he saw the king make some bad decisions, and here's what I'm not going to do. And so as a result of being around all this decision making, it was helped him out to do that. And of course, the main reason I believe that Nehemiah is so successful is because he was a man of prayer. He went to prayer in everything that he came into. And that's why I said that this book of Nehemiah is actually more like a prayer journal of Nehemiah, of the things that happened. So let's go ahead now as we go into chapter 5. It's almost like we come into another problem that's there. And so this one I'm going to call the inward challenge tonight. So let's go ahead and begin by just reading Nehemiah chapter 5, and we're going to start with the first 5 verses, and then we'll go through those. If you have your Bible, you turn there and read along, or I have it up on the screen for you also. Nehemiah chapter 5, and in verse number 1. And there was a great cry of the people and of their wives against their brethren the Jews. For there were that said, we, our sons and our daughters are many, therefore we take up corn for them, that we may eat and live. Some also there were that said, we have mortgaged our lands, our vineyards and houses, that we might buy corn because of the dearth. There were also that said, we have borrowed money for the king's tribute, and that upon our lands and vineyards. Yet now our flesh is as the flesh of our brethren, our children as their children, and lo, we bring into bondage our sons and our daughters to be servants, and some of our daughters are brought into bondage already. Neither is it in our power to redeem them, for other men have our lands and our vineyards. Let me go ahead and say, well, this time we came to chapter 5. The Jews are about halfway through building the wall at this time. And all of a sudden, they found that they had a problem they were complaining about, and at this time they weren't complaining about the Amorites or the Arabs or the Samaritans bothering them. They were actually complaining about being exploited by their own people, the Jews who were there. And that's what they're talking about here. And even, I find it interesting about this right here, it says, even of their wives. Now you're talking about back then for a woman to speak out, that wasn't a popular thing to do. Well, here we're talking about, we know who runs things in the home. That's the wife. They say, well, the husband is the head, but the wife is the neck that turns the head. All right, so anyway, well, here now you've got the people, and it's interesting that he says, and their wives. Now even the women are getting upset about this, and they're saying there's something wrong about this thing. In other words, they were telling Nehemiah, because we can't make it here, we're basically going on strike. That's kind of what they're saying here. They're giving some reasons why they can't work, because there are some things that are going on, and that's what all these different things they're talking about here. Now, of course, they didn't go out and picket. They just were kind of stopping because they were struggling just to have enough to eat. And you think about, why would they get that way? And that's what we're going to find out in this chapter, is why they did that. Now, remember, in the first chapters of Ezra, my wife's been reading through that herself, those people who had returned from exile, in the first chapters of that, they came back with a lot of worldly goods. When they were sent back first, before Ezra, they had a little money to come in. That was Zerubbabel, and who was before Ezra? I think it was Zerubbabel came in, but he had also some of the king's treasury took with them, and they took some money back with them. And then if you look at it, and then Ezra came back in, and that's what in Ezra they even list some of the articles that are there. There's like 5,400 things of just gold and silver. In addition to King Cyrus at that time, he had opened up his treasury to help them to do it. So a lot of these Jews, when they went back over there, they weren't poor. They were bringing a lot of money with them. It's kind of like when they departed from Egypt. All Egyptians gave them all the stuff and said, get out of here. That was the same thing that happened here. And so in the beginning of this, the returning Jews were actually pretty wealthy. If you look at the history behind it, I always like to look at the context and the history was happening, and they were kind of had some money when they were going back there. And just 13 years before Nehemiah's arrival, that second group with Ezra, remember, they had brought additional silver and gold with all of the free will offerings that came from Babylon. And you find that also in Zechariah chapter 6. You can find it. So what changed that these people would be now so desolate that they don't have anything? Now they're saying, hey, we can feed ourselves. One, it's the famine, because it says there's a dearth in the land. There was kind of a famine. That was a good reason. And of course, another one says was because of what? The next one, the king's taxation, where we're being taxed too much. But taxes were not that burdensome, really. The biggest problem was the wealthier Jews were exploiting the other ones. And that's where we come in. So we kind of see that coming down through Nehemiah. So the first couple of verses are pretty easy. They're coming through there. They're upset. Look, we've got a problem with the famine. We've got a problem with, that's the dearth. We've got a problem with, we've loaned our lands out. And man, now we're being put into bondage by our own people. So as a result of this, we go now to verse number 6. Chapter 5, verse number 6. And that is, and so Nehemiah says, and I was very angry when I heard their cry and these words. And I consulted with myself, and I rebuked the nobles and the rulers, and said to them, you exact usury every one of his brother, and I set a great assembly against them. And I said to them, we, after our ability, have redeemed our brethren the Jews, which were sold unto the heathen, and will you even sell your brethren? Or shall they be sold unto us? Then they held their peace, and they found nothing to answer. And so the first thing that we see here, what's Nehemiah's reaction was what? He got mad. He got a little upset. He says, hey, when I heard what you guys were doing, it made me mad. Now, have any of you ever gotten mad when you heard about somebody being exploited? Anybody have something where you can say, hey, man, I remember hearing about something that made me so mad, I had to do something about it. Anybody got a little testimony about that? There's something that happened just made me so mad. It's kind of like when you, well, we'll talk about that. I guess nobody wants to answer that one. But, hey, is getting mad okay? There's a good question. It says, is that okay for you to get angry? Well, just because the Lord records it doesn't mean it's right. Okay, smart aleck, yeah, okay. Yeah, he did. Yeah, he got angry. Matter of fact, isn't there a scripture in Ephesians that says what? Be ye angry and sin not. So, yes, anger is something that, well, I heard a message one time where somebody said, anger is always bad. And I said, well, then I guess Jesus did something bad because he got real upset. But remember, he got so mad he turned over the tables in the temple and he chased them out with a whip. All right, so, I mean, I guess maybe, but he was going, come on, guys, please leave for us. No, I don't think he was real happy about it. So, yeah, sometimes, I guess they call that righteous indignation. So sometimes anger can motivate you to do something good. We see people being exploited. So here, of course, he gets really angry. And you stop and think why that is because the Jews are actually, these guys that are there, are actually disobeying the very law that they were told to do. It says in Leviticus chapter 25, it says, hey, if anybody of your countrymen becomes poor among you and sells himself to you, don't make him work as a slave, basically. You can read it right here. I'm kind of giving you a paraphrase. You can read it for yourself. Treat him like a hired worker or temporary. He's to work for you until when? Just work until the year of Jubilee, and then he's let go. All right? And then you are supposed to let him and his children, because back then, if you worked for somebody, you almost kind of lived on a property, or they almost like owned you, but they really didn't, because God says you're not supposed to own them. If you look down there at Exodus chapter 22, verse number 25, even if you lend money to anybody that is poor, you will not do what? You won't charge him usury. Don't charge somebody interest. So if you loan somebody money, you're not supposed to charge them interest. And what's interesting about that is Deuteronomy chapter 23 even makes that clearer. It says, thou shalt not lend upon usury to thy brother, usury of money, usury of victuals. Don't charge them interest on money, not on food, not on anything. You're not supposed to take interest on it. Unto a stranger you can do it, but to your brother don't lend. And why is he saying for them to do this? Here's the reason. Here he gives the reason why I don't want you doing it. He says that the Lord your God may bless you in all that you do, and that what are your positions. He wants them to be different. Don't be like everybody else. Remember, God can make a difference in your life. All right, so we have these people getting so upset. Hey, anybody can think of a time when people are being exploited in our country, that people exploit other people for some reason? Just think about what's going on in Florida right now. In Florida, you got the hurricane. Hey, Carol, how you doing? What happens to the price of water when they know a hurricane is coming? That's right. What happens to the price of plywood? That's right. All these people, they know a tragedy is coming, and we even in America, we're exploiting our own people because we know they're going to be in trouble and making them pay more for what they're having. How about gas prices? Can you think of another example? I mean, there is no reason for the gas in our state in San Diego to be $5 and what? What'd you say you went to the gut was what? $5.65 a gallon. when it's $2 cheaper in a place that takes farther to get it. They shipped it farther for them to get it there. Now figure that one out. There's some greedy people. And of course, we're not counting that. The state of California has been adding that extra 50 cents every so often to our gas. Everybody's forgetting that. It incrementally comes out at so much money at a time. That's why it begins to go up, because California, I know that people said they voted for it, but it was tricked. They were tricked into voting for it because it wasn't clear on the ballot. That's right. So people thought they were voting against it, but they were actually voting for it. So even we're cheating our own people. Isn't that exactly what was going on here? People taking advantage of it. And so, what's sad is that internal attacks are much worse than external attacks. When you're fighting somebody that you know is your enemy, like remember, they were fighting who? They were fighting Sanballat and Tobiah and other people. That's who they knew the enemy was. But now they're being attacked from within. When people are attacked from without, you ever notice they tend to unite? But when people are attacked from within, it seems to divide. I think that's why. What does God say about the church, about us treating each other? We're supposed to do what? We're supposed to be nice. There you go. Okay, yeah, we're supposed to be nice to each other. Because the devil knows if he can get some infighting in the church, it's going to cause everything to be a problem. We can all, if somebody from the outside attacks us, we're going to all join together and we're going to fight that thing. But when we start bickering and gossiping and infighting, well, then we got all kinds of problems. That happens in anything. The devil knows that. That's why down through the years, he has always attacked Christians over and over and over again from within instead of from without. Because whenever there's pressure from without, it seems like Christianity flourishes. But when it has that problem within, then we have problems. All right? So we need to make every effort to keep the Bible calls it the unity of the Spirit through the bond of what? Peace in the church. All right? Matter of fact, he seems to use that word, you must do this. You've got to do this a lot of times. So Nehemiah has this internal problem that we see, and he gets mad about it because the Jews are breaking their own laws. And again, have you figured it out? Have you ever been motivated to do something because you got mad about it? Anybody got a testimony about it? No, because you guys never get mad, I understand that. All right? You ever stop and think, it never says, be lustful and do not sin. It never says, be greedy and do not sin. But it does say, be angry and don't sin. So it's a little bit different there. So anger can be the right thing to do it. So he gets upset, and then what does he do after he gets upset? I love this one. He says, I consulted with myself. He said, self, what should we do about this? What he did? He stopped to think about, okay, I got mad, and before you went off on somebody, he thought, maybe I better take some time. I think what he's saying is, I think I need to count to 10. You ever had to do that? All right, yeah. Nobody's ever had to do that? You guys are so wonderful Christians. You never get angry. You never get mad at anybody. I tell you, you guys are such a blessing. All right. But it says he pondered these things in his mind. He gave himself some time to think about it. I got mad. Now I better think about this a little bit. And I think that's always good. In other words, the word for consult there is basically to give yourself self-advice. What he's saying is, I need to counsel myself for a second. Give myself some good advice so I don't do something stupid. Anybody ever have an example of them getting mad or doing something rash without thinking about it, and it didn't turn out right? Oh, yeah? You're saying, yeah, my life. Okay, nothing more specific? All right. Well, oh, okay. Well, again, Nehemiah got mad, but he did what we never do, is he thought before he spoke. He put his brain in gear before he put his mouth in motion. How about we do that? Usually we put our mouth in motion before we put our brain in gear, right? We get upset, but no, he didn't get the emotional reaction, which most of the time when we get mad, I think when we say things when we're upset, it usually doesn't turn out right, does it? It usually kind of goes wrong. And so it's good for us. Who was that? I can't remember who it was. Was it Thomas Jefferson who said, you got to count? He's the one that started that thing. He said, you got to count to 100. I think he said, count to 100. When you get upset with something, take time and count to 100 before you do anything about it. You know, in my wife's case, I would have her count to 1,000. All right, before she says anything to me and gets too mad at me, because that gives me more time to run and be so far away, right? Okay. All right. The Bible does say it's better to dwell in the corner of a rooftop than in a wide house with an angry woman. So I make sure there's times to take a walk. All right. So put it this way, however long it takes you to cool down before you make a decision, that's a great example that he's telling us here during that time. And how many times have you been right about something, but because you foolishly lost your temper about it, it came out that you were wrong, that you came out to be the bad guy? Anybody ever had that happen? Okay, good. Larry, you're human, and so are you, Dave. Thank you. We're living among some perfect people here, so I got to have some people along with me. All right. Okay, so he says, I confronted myself, and then what does he do? He does something about it. Not only does he says, okay, now I'm going to kind of make a plan here, and then after he did it, he goes back, and it says he goes to people causing the problems, which is the nobles and the rulers, and he says, hey, man, you guys are the problem. You guys are disobeying. You guys are not doing what is right, and he got everybody together to say, basically, he gathered them, and he had, look, we're going to have a meeting. We're going to all get together here, and we're going to figure this thing out. And so basically, he does that in these particular verses. He goes down. He says, you know, we're going to take care of it. We're going to have an intervention. We're going to come in here, get everybody together, and we're going to get some of these grievances going. You know, because basically he pointed out too, you know, anybody have a testimony of a friend or somebody that you know who was just messing up, and as far as you know, you said something about it? You know what I mean? You actually said something. Because that's what we're supposed to do. If a man sees somebody overtaken in a fault, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to go and talk to him about it and see if that's right. So you don't do it. You know, so if you see something, those problems like that just don't go away themselves. They do. It does take sometimes to address things, and then it goes down. Let's go down to then the next verse, because I mean, a fool gives full vent to his anger, but a wise man keeps himself under control. He who is slow to anger has great understanding, but he who is quick-tempered exalts folly. So it's always good not to do it. So he goes, and he then hears what happens. So also I said, it's not good what you're doing. Ought you not to walk in the fear of our God because of the reproach of our heathen, our enemies? I likewise and my brethren and my servants might exact of them money and corn. I pray you, let us leave off this usury. Restore, I pray you, to them, and even this day, their lands, their vineyards, their olive yards, their houses, also the 100th part of the money. In other words, give them back 100%. You've taken it. Give them back 100%. Matter of fact, in the Bible, sometimes if a guy takes something wrong, he's supposed to restore it, what? Most of the time it's fourfold. If you've done somebody wrong, you need to go back. You don't just give them back what you took from them. You give them a bunch more also. But wouldn't that be nice if we did it? And so he goes back and says, okay, you guys give back everything. He says, you give back the corn, you give the wine, the oil that you took. And they said, okay, we're going to restore everything, and we're going to require nothing, and we're going to do what you said. And then look, here's what I thought was interesting. He says, now I'm going to call, and so I called the priests and took an oath of them that they should do according to his promise. So he brought the preacher in and says, okay, you promise in front of the pastor. Basically, that's what he said. You promise in front of the whole church, and we're going to make sure that you're going to do this thing that you said that you're going to do. Okay, so I'm going to make you promise to these guys over here, and you priests, you remember they said this before God. All right? All right, so that's kind of what's happening here, and he offers just a solution then for them, and that is just do what is right. And if you look at verses 10 and 11 there, just basically stop, stop charging interest. Give the people back their land. Return the interest that you've collected from them. It's just, why don't you just go ahead and get things right? And sometimes it just takes action to do it. And you've got to go ahead and just make things right. And too many times we have problems, and we focus on the problems and not the solutions. But Nehemiah is saying, okay, let's just make a solution to this. Let's just do what is the right thing. Give everything back. And then he goes back, and this next one, if you go back after verse number 12, he's basically just saying now, I'm telling you this because I've been leading by example. Look at verse number 10 there. He says, basically, and I and my brothers, look, we've lending to people money and grain, but we're not charging interest. We've come here and we've been trying to help, but we're just helping the people to do it. And that's what he's saying here. I'm kind of leading by example. Then he gets into verse number 13. He says, and so I shook my lap and said, I guess it's kind of a way of, I don't know, I'm brushing you off. I'm just, shook my lap. I'm just basically, okay, so God shake out every man from his house and from his labor that performeth not this promise, even thus he shall be shaken out and emptied. And all the congregation said, Amen, and they praised the Lord, and the people did according to the promise. In other words, if you don't keep this promise, man, basically, how about you just lose everything? Let's just go ahead, and I don't know exactly what he's talking about being shaken out, but it seems like what it means is that if you don't perform what you're supposed to do, you're just going to lose everything. Because it's your job to make sure this is right. Make sure what's going on that people can do the job. Because what was Nehemiah's job? His whole purpose of coming there was to get people to work, get the people together, and build that wall back around that city. And now he's finding that the people aren't doing the job because they're being what? They're being exploited by their own brothers who are taking advantage of them. So, moreover, from the time that I was appointed, and he now begins to talk about how that the people who were there, he's going in now that in the past they've taken tribute, they've gotten paid. In other words, they were professional politicians who are being paid to do the job as governor. All right, I looked at running for mayor of La Mesa. What would it take to be mayor or be a councilman? And I thought, all right, let's how hard is it? Just to knock on every door? And what's it going to take? And I looked at it, I thought, it shouldn't be too hard. That city is not that big. Then I saw what they pay. It's like $15,000 a year. Which is, I thought, wow, that's not worth it. That's not worth running to be in there, because I would like to get $400,000 a year and then after I've been there for a couple of years, get a pension the rest of my life to do it, kind of like senators and congressmen get, you know what I mean? And I thought, wait a minute, and the mayor, he doesn't get paid much either. And I thought, what a blessing. Wouldn't it be great if people did it as public servants and not as professional politicians, that they get a bunch of money for it, that they can come and do it? First of all, you got to be so rich to even start that when you get there, you're taking everybody's money, and you're taking money, and you're not put under the same rules everybody else in the country has to be put under. Not that I'm complaining. But I'm just saying, Nehemiah is saying, that's what you guys have been doing. Look what he says here. Moreover, From the time that I was appointed to be their governor in the land of Judah, from the 20th year even unto the 32nd year of Artaxerxes the king, that's 12 years he's been there, I and my brethren have not eaten the bread of the governor. We haven't taken a salary from you guys. We're not doing this for the money. We came here to help. We came here to fix things. We came here to do stuff. And wouldn't it be great? I think our country would pay a lot better off if we, like we did it when we started, where you were just went into public office as a public servant, and you went in there to sacrifice part of your life for a certain period of time to help America be great. Right? And then I don't know where it turned. I haven't gone through the history books, but all of a sudden, somewhere in there, it turned where now it's become just professional politicians. You're doing it as a job, as a public servant. And when you get in there, of course, even to get in, you got to have a bunch of money to get there. So I don't know how we can fix. I got my own thing of it, but he's basically saying here, I'm not going to be like that because I'm here for you. Look what he says. But the former governors, verse number 15, that had been before me were chargeable unto the people, and had taken of them bread and wine, besides 40 shekels of silver. Yea, even their servants bear rule over the people. But so did not I, because of the fear of God. I'm doing it because I'm concerned about this. Man, I'm listening to the Lord. I'm afraid of this thing. I'm not going to mess up and do something that just, because, you know, can you think of any cases where money has changed somebody's mind about something? Yeah, think about art. Hey, think about how many guys go in there with good intentions, right? They go in, especially public service, and then once they get in there, they find they can't get anything done unless they go along with things, unless they do it the way that it's being done in the system. And then they go, well, look what you're getting, and if you're in here for 6 years, is it 6 years for Congress? You get a lifetime pension? Is it 6 years?
6 for senators and 2.
Okay, so it's 6 for senator. If you make it 6 for senator, Congress is only 2 years for a lifetime pension? Or is it the opposite? A senator goes in for 4 years, right? 6 years. A 6-year term for senator? And a 4-year term for Congress. 2? Sheesh. I guess I should, huh? It is, but they do different from senators. Senators and House representatives are two different things. Yes, correct. Yes. I guess I'm going to have to go back and read my history books. Right? The bottom line, you know what I'm talking about, and that is that we have some difficulty here. But he's saying, I'm not going to be swayed by doing this. And look what he says. The former governors, look, they took it of you. And I'm not going to do it because I'm fearing the Lord. I don't want to do something wrong. Yea, he says, I continued in the work of this wall. Matter of fact, I'm working right along with you. I'm not sitting up here. I'm not making laws about things that I'm not participating in myself. All right? Wouldn't that be great if some of the people that are in our Congress actually had a job? You know? And then had to go out and work? Yeah, well, okay, we're getting way into it. Patty, you're too many pet peeves you're bringing up here. All right? And so, he says, I didn't do it. Yea, I continue the work. Neither bought we any land. All my servants were gathered thither to the work. In other words, it's amazing how that I only get, I didn't go into politics and only make $190,000 a year and become a multimillionaire. Isn't that amazing how you can not have a job, go into politics, only make $100 and something thousand a year, and all of a sudden you're a multimillionaire? I wouldn't reference our president, but I'm just saying, who never had a job, but yet all of a sudden you got all this money. Where'd it come from? What'd you do? Well, it looks like they've been exacting it from the people. I'm not even going to mention Ukraine. All right. Moreover, there were at my table, look at this, 150 of the Jews and rulers, besides those that came with us from among the heathen that were about us. And so I got 150 people along with me that I'm feeding myself. All right? And verse number 16. Now, verse number 17, there's a bunch of, and now that which was prepared for me daily was 1 ox, 6 choice sheep, also fowls that were prepared for me, and once in 10 days store of all sorts of wine. Yet in all this required I not bread of the governor, because the bondage was heavy upon the people. Here's how much it costs me just to feed my staff, to feed everybody that's here, and I haven't asked you for a dime. I'm doing it because I'm doing it for the Lord. I came here to accomplish something. And so it's just amazes me about what kind of heart this guy had just to serve the Lord, and I'm just going to do it because, he says, verse number 19, think upon me, my God, for good according to all that I've done for this people. And so, wouldn't it be great for people just to serve the Lord without thinking they have to get some kind of recompense for it? You know, I go to some of these, my daughter, let me give you an example. Anybody ever heard of this? Maybe you have, but she says, well, I just saw her up in Pennsylvania while I was gone. One of my daughters went up there and met us. The other Jeannie. We got 4 Jeannies all there. So great-grandma, grandma, mom, and daughter were all there, all Jeannies. And she says, yeah, the church, they want to pay me to work for them. We joined this church, and I'm doing stuff. We're getting involved with the youth because she's got teenagers. So I'm getting involved, and I'm doing stuff. And I made there, and the pastor come to me and says, can I pay you to come do stuff? He says, no, I'm just doing it. I don't want money. And she says, first of all, she said, if they give you money, that means you're definitely bound in to have to do it. All right? And she said, and then everything that they do, they said they want to pay them for it. You want to work in the nursery? We're going to pay you to work in the nursery. You want to go do something here? We're going to pay. So they said, okay, well, how about we pay you then just to bring the food in? We're going to pay you to bring food in. As a matter of fact, we like your food so much, we'll pay you to cater food in when we have staff meetings and stuff. And she says, I would just do it for nothing. But it seems like church work can't get done unless the church pays people to do it. You ever stop and think about that? Now, the church I came from, we didn't pay anybody. We were such cheapskates. We didn't pay anybody anything. You know what I mean? I couldn't imagine when I hear these churches that say they pay people to do this and do that. We didn't pay people to do anything, and we had I'm not saying it's good or bad, but we never had a big shortage of people working the nursery. We didn't have a shortage of people teaching Sunday school classes or coming in and washing things up and cleaning up afterwards. We hired a head maintenance man that was in charge literally of the maintenance of the whole property. The only person paid was him. And then he had a whole staff of people under him that cleaned the whole property. We didn't pay a dime to any of those people. And so when I see some of these churches, and for every little thing somebody does, let's pay you to do that. We're going to pay you to go do this. Well, how about I pay you to come to church? I'll give you $5 every time you show up in the door. Maybe we'd have a bigger church. I don't know. Maybe I should change what's going on. But I don't understand that. Why don't people just do it because they're supposed to? Do it because they love the Lord, or just want to serve the Lord, and just volunteer to do something. I got gifts that God gave me. How about I just show up and just serve the Lord and do it despite having to get paid for it? Matter of fact, I might go work the nursery if they pay me enough. I don't know. I haven't figured that out yet. So what I can say is, for our church, don't plan on getting paid anything. All right. When I get paid, then you'll get paid. All right. I'm just kidding. It's just a joke. All right. So anyway, Nehemiah didn't use any official expense account for all of his household expenses. He didn't tax the people. They paid out of their own pockets, and they didn't ask for reimbursement. I'm not saying anything, but my wife, she does. Don't say that. Okay. She gets off of work, and she goes in and makes Wednesday meals for us to eat. And she doesn't put in a reimbursement ticket. It doesn't say get reimbursed for that. She went and bought, the other night, we bought that chicken from Albertsons. Well, that's because it was like $80. Yeah, yeah. Okay, look, I'll give you a little bit, but I'm not giving you a lot, all right? I'm not going to give you half my paycheck because I want to eat chicken. Okay. But, I mean, it's just, she doesn't think about doing it. And usually if it is because I'm the cheapskate, I'll say, man, you're spending that much money, put a reimbursement in for that thing. But, it's very rare. It's very rare that, even, I remember when I was, I've been a pastor for, 40 years. And I can't think, it's very rare that I put in reimbursement for just things that I just do do the church. It's part of what you do. It's just, unless it's a lot of money, I can understand that. If something the church asks you to do, then sure, put your reimbursement in. But just to do things, I don't understand that. The bottom line is, Nehemiah was basically visible in what he was doing. He showed the people by example that, look, here's what we're going to do. Take care of the problem. Quit causing this. So this particular chapter is now that other problem. We have some internal people that are saying, man, we're being exploited. We can't even, our own people are taxing us, doing things so much, we got to do something about it. Nehemiah basically says, hey, you know what? That's terrible you guys are doing this. He gets mad about it. He says, let's go do this. He said, okay, well, what am I going to do about it? Before I get too upset and go get myself in trouble, say the wrong thing, like when people come to the back door and say, what are you doing here? I'm going to think about it a little bit, and I'm going to probably try to do it the right way. What should I say? Nothing wrong with thinking a little bit of what's going on. And he says, okay, I guess I'm going to have to confront these guys who are doing the wrong thing. He confronts them doing the wrong thing, so let's go ahead and get this right. He gets everybody together and says, we're a team here. Let's get this thing right. Let's make it all right. All the people, everybody agreed with what they should do. The people that were doing the wrong thing got it right. And all of us make mistakes, but what's best is when we all get it right. So you're doing something wrong. Well, you know what? The great thing about the Lord is you can always repent and get it right. I think the Lord, since the Lord's a God of a second chance, we probably give people a second chance too. Maybe third, fourth, fifth. And so they get it right. He says, okay, now that you got it right, I'm telling you, do what I've been doing. Let's lead by example. Let's get the job done. And here's what we've been doing. So I'm only doing this because we're doing it for the Lord. Let's all get on board and let's finish the wall. That's kind of what he's getting here as we move into chapter 6 next week. If you read this chapter, anybody have something that as they read through it, they go, these are the things that stand out to me going through chapter 6. Anybody read this, think there was something that I see there that really just kind of stood out to me? Anybody got anything? Well, okay. Okay, next week, Nehemiah chapter 7. Here's what I suggest. What's that? Oh, it says chapter. Okay, I'm thinking ahead. Right. Okay, Nehemiah chapter 6 next week. And I read through it, and so what I kind of got of it is now things are getting personal for Nehemiah. And that's kind of what I got out of that, this next chapter. But why don't you read it too, and I'd appreciate it if you see something special God speaks to you about, just go ahead and share it so I'm not doing all the talking. I'm just sharing what God showed me through this thing. All right, thank you so much for being here tonight. It's good to have Brandon and Stacy again here. All right, and Larry, it's good to have you too. All right, all right. Okay, well, let's go ahead and just have a quick word of prayer, close us, and then we'll go ahead and call it an evening. Why don't we have Brother Dave Schindel go ahead and close us with a word of prayer also, and you can just, why don't you pray again for Saturday and for Sunday also.